left-wing Kingz. Listen, think, act, repeat.
So voter ID laws require citizens to present government-issued photo identification to vote. So while proponents argue that these laws prevent voter fraud, numerous studies have shown that in-person voter fraud is incredibly rare. So Walonda, how do voter ID laws suppress voting, and do you feel they're necessary or not?
Okay. People might think I think a certain way, but I like the voter ID. I think that emphasizes the integrity of who you are. I think about even in my own job, and most of our jobs here, we have IDs, right, to get us inside the building. I do think that you should have some type of identification on who you are. Now, with that being said, it should not be used to suppress votes, meaning it should be an easier pathway to get an ID. And we know in Texas, it is it's impossible. I think you should be making that very easy for people to have, but I do think you should be able to identify yourself. And the argument is that because it disproportionately affects marginalized groups, right? Mm-hmm. So we're thinking about our disabled. We're thinking about some of our minorities who don't have the money, who don't have the means to getting there. So what are we doing for them to help them get ID? Doesn't mean they're not a citizen just because I don't have an identification at the time. I could have lost it, all kind of reasons as to why I don't have my ID. I think we should be employing rules and regulations to help them get it easier. But I do think you should have an ID. I do think it helps with the integrity. Then people will stop saying that people who are immigrants or non-citizens are voting, because I vote all the time. And I'm telling you right now, what do they ask us for? ID every single time. Mm-hmm. Verify my address, verify my birthday. Yeah. Almost ask me for my blood type. I mean, there's so much information that you have to give, but I do think at least showing a face to the identification when you vote, I agree with that. I think it helps with the integrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's it's like anything that you're doing with the government. Pretty much, you got to prove who you are. So nothing against that. But I think that a lot of times it is twisted and aimed toward disenfranchised voters, and it's a class war. It's what it is. It's like a way of taking the vote away from people who are lower class. And I think that when it's used as strategy, like, hey, we're gonna go in here and that's I think where it comes at. But I mean, I think it's just like you said, common sense. To vote, you need an ID, plain and simple.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit you with statistics real quick. So from the Brennan Center for Justice, now listen carefully on as far as what was the percentage of people voting that shouldn't be voting. It is 0.0003%, the 0.0025% that has happened as far as confirmed cases of people voting that shouldn't be voting.
I don't know how you do that. Like, how you go into the voter's place and like, hey, y'all want to vote, and you just ain't got no ID. You know what I'm saying? You show up to the club with a damn ID. You know what I'm saying? So
people don't. First of all, when I think about doing crimes, I'm sorry, but voter crime is not the one they're thinking about doing.
Yeah.
It's just not.
I gotta get Biden in there.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that is not the number one that they're gonna go do.
Hey, let me borrow your ID real quick, man. I gotta go vote. I ain't never heard that. You know what I'm saying?
But what I will say for like the other side of the discussion, like you brought up disenfranchisement, Tina brought up the cost of getting an ID. Like, I mean, these are real things, and there are places where individuals live paycheck to paycheck, and they ain't willing to give that whatever $20, $15 to get an ID because they gotta. Some people are choosing between food and rent, y'all. Okay. They ain't trying to spend $15 to get an ID. And I'm gonna tell you right now, in a lot of states, you don't need to have an ID to vote because there are alternatives. You sign an affidavit. Then guess what? After you sign that affidavit, they check against the voter rolls to make sure that you're on there and you're a registered voter. Then you're marked off the list as voted. Same thing. Like there's other ways. Like they check the voter polls, have you give your address and your date of birth and other information. Like you said, you don't need an ID in every place to vote. Now, could it be that they give you options? Yes, because maybe they should have options, ID or this or whatever. But at the end of the day, there are many states, and I'm just going to give you my little stats knuckle on. There are states out there who allow you to be an immigrant and have a driver's license. So those states are California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. So
A lot of blue states.
to your whole thing. Yeah, I got an ID. Let me vote. Nah, you still guess what? Even if you have an ID in them states, you still can't vote because you're not a registered voter because you're not a citizen, so you can't get on the voter rolls.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So to me, it's kind of like a moot point. Like, and they want them to have. And guess why? Why would you want somebody who's an immigrant to have a driver's license? Because it's safer. Because you have to take the driver's test. You gotta have a driving thing where you go and somebody sits in a car with you and make sure your ass knows how to drive. Because guess what? They still gonna drive.
Yeah.
They gonna drive. There's plenty of people out there driving without insurance, without licenses, all kind of shit.
Especially
so you would rather have these
them,
people, if you're immigrants and you gonna live here,
and work.
please be safe. Yeah. You going to work, you doing shit, be safe. Get a driver's license to show that you safe driving. You know what the fuck you doing. But guess what? They still can't vote.
Yeah.
Having an ID don't mean you can vote either. So there's, I don't know, the argument on both sides. I get what y'all is saying, like from a point where like, hey, you should have an ID. Because here in Texas, that's all we see. Yeah. Every time we've gone to vote, we've known we needed an ID.
We're required
to have an ID just to walk on the street.
Basically. Right. So, but in many states,
you're not.
You can be an immigrant and get an ID. So it doesn't solve, my point is, it ain't solving the problem by having an ID. You can still be an immigrant and have one.
Right, but look at the voter fraud. It's 0.0. Okay, how many zeros? 0.00003%.
And that's another good point. Like
that's voter fraud. You can go.
There's people in all
fact check me on that information.
And they all got immigrants with IDs, and they ain't trying to vote.
Right,
because they know they can't.
Right, if people are trying to commit crime, I'm sorry, it's not. I want to go vote today. You know what crime I'm going to do? I'm going to do voter fraud today. No, they're trying to get money. They're trying to live. They're trying to eat. And that's, as a human, that's what people are trying to do.
Yeah, voting is low on the priority.
Very low on the priority. Okay.
Like, I got to get in this election. You know what I mean?
Yeah.